ba emeng ba re bona di-taxi tsa bona di ka se be part ya utswa le part ya official setšhaba se sa borena ba tseba gore le a tseba gore economy e heiwa a e wele mmušo fela e wela bana ba bo lena e wela lena ke lena le tlo tlhokang mebereko mebereko ke kgale e shorta mo nageng ya borena re nyaka o leboga gape di-community policing forum le emeng la re lena le tla šireletša setšhaba sa borena le tla šireletša meago ba bangwe a la robala re nyaka gore le ba bangwe ba maobane motshehare ba šireletšeng meago eo o tshwana le dimolo mara bošego e le sepela le yo robala magodu a boa a tla fiša dimolo tse cause ba bone gore lena le eme le ska nyama le tshwanetse le kgono le eme le re le tla šireletša setšhaba sa bolena re a leboga thego le ifileng setšhaba le ifileng economy ya lena le ifileng lena sa setšhaba because mapodisa le ba thekgwa ke masole ba ka se šireletše everywhere ba ka se kgone ba everywhere ke rena re le setšhaba re tshwanetse re emelele ka mokana rena re šireletše tše tseleng tša rena because magodu ga o tswetse mmušo ba o tswetsa rena ba o tswetša bana ba borena re a leboga ka motsotso o ke tla bitša ministera wa mapodisa general Qele a tlo o bala statement sa di-security cluster ke a leboga.
What is the instruction about this?
You choose.
Good morning, everybody, especially the ministers that are here. Minister Georgia of the SSA, Minister Mapisa Ngagule, Defense, the generals, both from the SANDF, Babsangweni, and Babus Tolle from the South African Defense, and all other senior officials that are here, including the SecDef of the Army. Thank you very much, Chairperson, Minister Jabeni. Over the past 2 days, the ministers from the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security, JCPS cluster, met to discuss the reports they have received from the Joint Operation Committee, JOCOM, of the South African Police Service and Security, which reflects on the incidents of violence and looting which took place in parts of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. These reports have also presented to the ministers the critical intelligence information from the state security agents, South African Police Crime and Defense Intelligence. The intelligence information has provided timeous, critical, and sometimes unique analysis information to give early warning signs of potential risk and dangers. The law enforcement officers have used this intelligence information in responding with speed to the issues on the ground and attending to areas which have been identified as potential hotspots areas. All ministers, we are satisfied with all the reports we have received, and we are confident that our law enforcement agencies are able to do their job effectively. In all our operations, we still have the responsibility to save human lives. The current situation on the ground is under strong surveillance, and we will ensure that it does not deteriorate any further. We cannot allow anyone to make a mockery of our democratic state, and we have instructed the law enforcement agencies to double their efforts to stop the violence and to increase deployment on the ground. All ministers of the cluster, we add our voices to that of the President and the many law-abiding and peace-loving South Africans who have strongly condemned lawlessness, violence, and destruction that is currently happening in certain areas of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, as reported in the media. We call for an immediate end to this violence, looting, and the disregard of the law and call for an immediate return to the peace and stability. As cluster ministers, we are encouraged and heartened by the outpouring of the messages also on social media platforms by the South Africans who, from all communities and walks of life, who are saying that wanton destruction of property such as shops, malls, taxis, trucks, and other transport infrastructure will not be destroyed in their names. These messages of support echo the attitude of our country that this infrastructure is the lifeblood of our society and economy. Without this, we cannot hope to grow our economy, ensure we all have food and fuel, and can go about our daily lives towards the goal of prosperity for all. South Africa is a democratic state that is governed by the Constitution. As the President stated in his address to the nation last night on the 12th July 2021, I quote, "Our Constitution guarantees the right of every person to protest, to organize, and to engage in a free expression and free association," unquote. However, this right of engaging in peaceful protest comes with the responsibility of not infringement upon the rights of others who may not want to protest. No amount of unhappiness or personal circumstances from our people gives the right to anyone to loot, vandalize, and do as they please and break the law. We call on the communities to exercise restraint in dealing with the situation and, above all, ensure that innocent civilians are not harmed. We further urge all communities and groups to reject any call for violence and making the country ungovernable. We call upon anyone who has reliable information to report any acts of violence and intimidation to the South African Police Service on the toll-free line of 08600 10111, which is usually known as 10111. We also welcome the announcement by His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa on the 12th July 21 to authorize the deployment of the South African Defence Force personnel in supplementing the capacity of the South African Police in protecting the infrastructure and other operations. We also welcome the recall from leave and rest days of the South African Police members to beef up the policing work on the ground to make sure that the situation is calmed. Our latest report indicates that the total of 757 people have been arrested in KwaZulu-Natal, a total of 304, and in Gauteng, 453 were arrested. Of concern is the loss of lives that has accompanied the incidents of violence and destruction to property. The total number of fatalities that has been reported is 10, with 4 in KZN and 6 in Gauteng. Furthermore, 4 police officers were injured while responding to these violent protests and are recovering well. We further caution South Africans to note that the country is facing the COVID-19 pandemic and we are in the third wave, which is fueled by the Delta variant. Law enforcement agencies are also going to ensure the mass adherence to the adjusted alert level 4 lockdown regulations. That has now been extended by another 2 weeks. The greatest risk for the mass protests that have ensued in parts of the country is the rapid spread of the pandemic, causing a rapid rise in infections and affecting our ability as government and as health system to respond to it. Our health system is already under strain, and current developments put the lives of more South Africans at risk should the infection rise. Disaster Management Act enforcement operations will continue with heightened visibility to ensure that our communities observe the curfew that is in place from 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. Do not partake in any gathering, whether indoors or outdoors. Wear a mask at all times when in public place. Adhere to social distancing and health protocols at all times, in particular when attending a funeral with 50 mourners or less, which is the only gathering not prohibited during the level 4 lockdown. South Africans are reminded that washing or sanitizing of hands still remains our best arsenal against this virus. Our communities are also reminded that all social gathering, religious and other gathering, remain prohibited. Night vigils after funeral gathering and after tears gathering are not allowed. While you may still go to the beach and parks, there cannot be any gathering in those places. The transportation and sale of alcohol, both for on-site and off-site consumption, is prohibited. There will be no traveling into and out of Gauteng during the adjustment level 4 unless it is business related. Anyone found contravening the regulations will be processed accordingly in terms of the law. We also issue a stern warning to those circulating inflammatory messages on various social media platforms which are aimed at inciting violence and disregard of the law. The Cybersecurity Act states that any person who unlawfully makes available, broadcasts or distributes by means of computer system a data message to a specific person, group of persons or general public with intentions to incite violence, or call people to be involved in the destruction of any property belonging to the people is guilty of offense. Those who engage in such acts will be liable for criminal offense and can receive a fine or be sentenced to imprisonment for a period not exceeding 3 years. As the cluster, we are monitoring all social media platforms as we are tracking those who are sharing false information and calling for civil disobedience. We are engaging the different platforms to track and trace the origins of inflammatory posts and messages inciting violence and have requested that these be taken down with immediate effect. While intervention of some of communities to actively stop the mass looting has been commended, we encourage communities not to take the law into their own hands and continue to work with the police. The involvement of other stakeholders is also critical in the fight against lawlessness and in this regard. We have already engaged the leadership of private security companies in an effort to increase better working relationship with the police and other stakeholders. As ministers in the cluster, we have the responsibility to assert the authority of the state and to safeguard our territory integrity and sovereignty on the public, and we shall just do that. Conclusion, we reiterate the words of President Ramaphosa last night when he said, quote, "We are building up, not shutting down. We will not be deterred as South Africans from the task ahead," unquote. If these acts of violence continue unabated, we run the risk of running out of basic foodstuff, and that would be disastrous for the country. We remind all South Africans to mark up, wash up, and keep your distance as we sustain our fight against the pandemic. And finally, register and vaccinate to save South Africa. We thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. To the ministers and the generals and the DGs and the Secretary of Defense, we're going to start with the questions. We've got the first 5 questions that we're going to ask for you to then take a response. The first question is from Jan Jan Joubert of Morula Media to Minister of State Security. The question is, what was the nature of the intelligence report foreseeing the anarchy? Did such exist, and if so, why were they not sufficiently acted upon, or were the intelligence structures blindsided and surprised? The second question is from Christian Duplessis of Network 24. Is the state at this moment considering announcing a state of emergency to contain the anarchy? Guess this is to the Minister of Defense. From Babalo of Eyewitness News, are law enforcement agencies planning on acting against any alleged instigators of the unrest in KZN and Gauteng? There are two questions from Sophie Mukwena of the SABC. The first one is, how are we going to ensure that the communities protect their property, as they protect their properties, this does not lead to communities taking the law into their own hands, and that it doesn't lead to racial and class conflict? Secondly, to Minister of Defense, this week, South African National Defense Force is also expected to send troops to Mozambique. Has Mozambique finally signed the State of Force Agreement, and when are the troops expected to go to Mozambique? Thank you. I'll start with you, Minister of State Security.
Thank you very much, Minister Ntshavheni. And I'll respond to the question that was asked on whether or not state security was alive in action, the support it gave, and whether that information was heeded too. From inception, when even before the violence actually flared up, between the South African Police Services and state security, we were sharing information. And we do this all the time, not only in this period that we are facing. From day one, when everything started, regardless of the fact that even before that, we always do share information. We did share information with the police. And I think South Africans need to understand that only so much can be done with the information that is at hand. Some of the information tends to be false. Some of the information is accurate and true, and we use various sources of information, and we also use our own systems for analyzing the information to package it for our client, which in this regard would have been the police. The police would have done their best as well to follow up on information that is given to them. They also have their own crime intelligence capability, but we all work together under the auspices of our Counterintelligence Coordinating Forum, including the auspices of the National Intelligence Coordinating Committee, whose key task is only to put a strategic product on the table, emanating from information that would have been collected from the three intelligence services, as it were, the Defense Force, Crime Intelligence, and SSA. We are responsible for all of that, and that information that we received, the information that we analyzed and packaged, was handed over to the police. But as you would have noticed, the target was very fast moving. We tried our best wherever we could, and we averted a lot more than what you see on national television because of the proactive stance that was taken by both intelligence services of the three ministries, but also the work that was done by the police in averting greater crime that could have occurred in that time. So I want South Africans to be rest assured that we did avert a lot. What you see is only a part of what could have happened. So we were not missing in action as SSA, and I dare say even the police were not missing in action. We tried our level best under a very difficult situation. And I would like to commend the two departments because it is the young men and women and those that command them in these structures that really put the shoulder to the wheel to ensure that that information is available and the other law enforcement agencies come into effect what it is that has been given to them. Thank you very much.
Yes, the replacement. Okay.
We'll have the Minister of Defense joining us virtually, taking the responses to the questions that are related to the defense.
Thank you very much, Minister Chabeni, and thank you, ministers. And thank you to the ladies and gentlemen of the media for the questions. The first question from the media is whether there will be a state of emergency declared in South Africa. Well, for now, I don't think there is an indication that there should be a state of emergency. Besides, when the time comes, informed by intelligence gathered and coordinated by the three entities, then the president will usually is advised, and then the president will then declare a state of emergency if a need arises based on that assessment report. For now, yes, the situation looks like it has gone out of hand. Yes, people are in a state of panic. We are all concerned about what is happening, but whether in fact it would be correct for now to declare a state of emergency, we do not think so. As you know, that a state of emergency actually, in a sense, you take all the liberties from citizens and the military takes over the country. For now, we do not think we have reached that point. Thank you very much. On the second one, which relates to Mozambique deployment, yes, tomorrow will be the 13th or 15th, yes, and that will be the D-Day, and that is the day in which it is expected that the Rapid Deployment Force of the region deploys into Mozambique as the directive of the heads of state. However, right up until last night, the status of forces agreement had not been signed. And I think I need to correct something here, Sophie. If the state of forces agreement has not been signed by Mozambique, it really has nothing to do with the perceived tensions which may be there between ourselves and Mozambique, as reported by yourselves in the media. This is a regional deployment. It is not a South African deployment. It's a regional deployment. This is a decision taken by the heads of state of the region of SADC, and therefore the signing that legal document, which is a legal requirement before deployment to another country, that legal document, if it is not signed, it actually prevents the entire region from deployment, and therefore has nothing to do with the perceived tensions between South Africa and Mozambique, if any at all. Thank you very much, colleagues. I hand over to you, Minister Chabeni.
Thank you very much. It would be on to question the arrest of the agitators. Yes, we will arrest agitators. The number of the people that has been arrested up to this point was mentioned. There are 304 in KZN and 453 in Gauteng. As was cited here, 30 more have been arrested in Gauteng. But around those people will have to get the agitators is exactly what the law enforcement agencies are doing to sift those that would have been just taken by the mob spirit to go there, who are there, and those who are planners and agitators on these matters. For instance, you have people that call themselves presidents, they call themselves addressing the nation. I've never seen a president that has not been elected who goes around addressing the nations in the hostel. And that person will have to really explain himself or herself as he moves around agitating people. And we are not going to allow to be a person unelected as he is, not a member of any leading structure and all that, going around addressing the nation. And addressing the nation insults the leadership of the nation that is elected, calling the people on violence, to commit violence. And those are agitators, some of them well known, some of them being identified. And I'm very sure when we sit down, as the president has instructed, that it should not just be an arrest, but it must proceed with the whole chain, go to prosecution. I'm very sure that as the prosecutors take over, as we're working with them, they will find those that have committed crime more than others. So that is taken care of. The second question is a racial question, which is a very serious question and a sensitive question. That one goes with a class question. That's why we are calling on communities where they are not to take the law in their hands, but we're also calling them to be active, working together with the law enforcement agencies. For instance, the police have got the communities in blue, there are CPF, all those recognized structures working with the community, with the community. They are allowed. Communities, there is nothing wrong. They are invited, but their contribution, working in protection of their property and life, please do that together with the law enforcement agencies. Don't go beyond and create the parallel structures yourself, working outside the recognized structures. And it must be avoided at all costs that this becomes a racial kind of war. There are incidents that are really worrying, especially around Durban communities. That will be your Phoenix and your Nanda, Pambai, around there. We are calling on those communities to come together themselves to fight any form of criminality, working with the law-abiding citizens and the police against. Not against the faces, not against the group of people, but against the criminality that will be prevailing there. And again, people must not begin to say they're fighting those that are having haves and have-nots, as is beginning to emerge in some other townships. Come together, fight against criminality in whatever form that is there, so long you work with the police, so long you work with other recognized and legal structures. So it's a call we're making. Refuse and resist to put this on a racial perspective. Resist to be used against other kind and other category of people. That's a call we'll make. Thank you.
There is inside the room Barry Bateman of ENCA. May you ask your question?
Thank you. I understand I have to go ask it up there for the self.
Okay, so you can go prepare as we ask the other questions. Okay.
Good morning, Ministers, Generals. As indicated, Barry Bateman from ENCA. You've addressed partially the issue of finding the instigators. Now, I've heard it from my intelligence sources within police crime intelligence that they've identified former senior members of the State Security Agency who are aligned with former President Jacob Zuma as being central to instigating the unrest, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal. As well as senior members within the ANC who have been the public faces of support for the former president. Can you confirm that you are investigating this line, that there are former senior people within SSA who are instigating this violence, and what are you going to do about it? Secondly, you talk about the early warning signs that intelligence provided, enabling the police to respond with speed to issues on the ground. I think that statement is so far removed from the reality of what we are actually seeing. We're witnessing police who are overwhelmed. Even where they are deployed to an area, they stand by and watch because they simply don't have the resources to do anything. How is that going to change with the SANDF now being deployed? And then lastly, Minister, Minister Cele, you touched on this, on Sophie Mokwena's question. This unrest has demonstrated that the police simply can't be everywhere all the time. Now, armed members of communities have taken upon themselves to protect their neighbors and their communities, and business owners who are armed have taken upon themselves to protect their own businesses. If it was not for these members of the public, you would see communities on fire and far more businesses on fire. So the question is this. So if a person decides today to go and buy a firearm, it'll take another year before they can take that home. Isn't this time for the SAPS to sort out what is going on at the Central Firearm Registry? Thank you.
Minister, given the number of questions he has asked, may I invite the ministers to respond, and then we'll then go to the next page so that we can have focused. I'll start, Minister of State Security.
Thank you very much for the question, Barry. You are one of those lucky ones who has your own agents within the security agencies. I wonder how much you pay them for that information. We did receive such information as the SSA, and we are investigating it. Any information that comes to us, you will understand. We investigate, we do an analysis, we determine and sift fact from fiction. So we are in the process of doing that. That information that you have, we also have. We're working on it. Our responsibility as SSA is to gather information, correlate information, package it properly for a client. It becomes intelligence, and we hand it over to law enforcement or a department that so needs that information. More than that, there's nothing that we can do. We provide intelligence product to our client. The police are our client. In certain instances, the Defense Force would be our client. All other departments of government become our clients. And if you remember very well, some few weeks ago, I had also announced that we will start working with big business as well, so that we can be able to provide the type of information to both business and to government, for them to be able to do what it is that they can do with that type of information that they would have received. So more than that, I mean, you would know the example of the guy who killed Uyinene, and I always make that example. We worked for the post office. Information was given by state security about this very individual. He was not fired, and the rest is history. So all we do as an agency, according to our mandate and what the law enjoins us to do, is to collect, correlate, and hand over to the client in a form of an intelligence package. Thank you.
Good morning, Perry. No, I can see that you're trying to throw the firearm processes on the back window. We'll discuss that on the other time. But I agree with you. even if there was no problems, if there were no problems as they are happening now, police must improve in their systems of dealing with the firearm licensing and all that. National Commissioner is here, he hears that, but we are working on it. As you know that you were part of it when the portfolio committee visited there, the building and all that, papers, we are working on it. So it does not necessarily mean that at this juncture that must be facilitated because fast track because of that. All the time that must be improved. The systems of the South African police vis-a-vis the firearm issuing to the private security, to the private citizen must improve. So I would give you that. I would agree with you on that one. Yes, you talk about the communities. Up to this point, Barry, my report is that those communities, they work with the police. That's what we're encouraging. I know reports did come from Phoenix, especially last night on that. They did come from Durban North. And I was told emphatically that those police stations and those police that are there are working with those members of the community. We are really encouraged that they don't just they wake up, they create the parallel structures. Working with the police is what we're encouraging and is there. Ukhuluma ngokuthi amaphoyisa are overwhelmed. Look, the system of policing will be created for the peaceful times. There are no police that are created for the war situation, are created for the peaceful times. And police, unfortunately, which is good for them, no matter under what circumstances, they must respond with a maximum restraint and constraint. It doesn't matter where. When police, they see the danger of losing lives, they have to take a step back. And maybe it would be folly not to say up to this point, congratulations to the police, the way they have worked around this issue. It would have been easy to them. Just go there, open fire, kill everybody, and we all come back to say these are brutal police and all that kind of thing. But they'll have to measure between the implementation of the law and the lives that are there. We believe and we hope that the backup that the police are receiving, soldiers will relieve them from some other areas, maybe not mentioning exactly where there are police at the present moment, and you take the police out there and you leave amasosha, and amasosha akwazi ukuthi agade lezo indawo ezibalulekile njengeindawo ezibhekela uhulumeni neindawo zomnotho ezibizwa ngokuthi ama-point abalulekile, the key points. Bese dedela amaphoyisa ukuthi amaphoyisa akwazi ukungena ngaphakathi alandele lezi gebengu nako konke lokho okunye okushilo. Mhlambe ke bese just make a request, Barry, to share the list of the identified criminals with us, so that we continue to do our work. Maybe through the minister there, but we'd like to get that list. But one thing for sure, there are quite several of the people that are agitating that are within the sight of the South African police. Some of them have been picked up, some of them will pick them up, but after long this is gone, we'll pursue and follow them, and the law will take its full course going forward. Thank you.
The next batch of questions from Sipoma Bena of The Citizen. First question, there's been a spectacular failure to move quickly on people inciting violence, let alone be ahead of the looting and the torching of trucks. The outbreak started by Zuma supporters and members of his family inciting violence. The breaking down and hollowing out of intelligence structures, weaponing such structures against political opponents, and to enable state capture during the so-called 9 lost years of Zuma's tenure is well documented. To what extent has lack of ground intelligence and the breaking down of these structures contributed to the failure to quell the current thuggery? Second question, what has been the biggest lessons of the riots for the law enforcement agencies? What is it that government could have done better? Third question is from Kalen Pillay of the Independent Media. Do the police stations have the capacity to hold those arrested, considering COVID protocols needed to be implemented? I think this the commissioner must take. What is your response to those saying that SAPS were completely unprepared for this? The fifth question, we know that police officers have often highlighted their lack of resources. How are they being assisted? And those police stations being assisted with vehicles, riot gear, and etc. There are other questions in this batch that will respond in general from the presidency. But if we can take those 5 questions. Minister of State Security, you'll have to start.
I'd like to cite the section of the Constitution that speaks to freedom of expression and go to the part which says that this right of freedom of expression is not extended to propaganda of war, incitement of imminent violence, or advocacy of hatred that is based on race, ethnicity, gender, or religion, and that constitutes incitement to cause harm. These are the conversations that we've been having both in the ruling party, the governing party, and also as the JCPS over the last few days. We are serious about apprehending those that are responsible for breaking the law in terms of specifically Section 16(2) of the Bill of Rights. We all have rights enshrined and protected in the Bill of Rights, but that does not mean the rights of others should not be violated by those who, in their quest to implement their own rights or to address their own rights, are concerned. I will categorically refuse to acknowledge an untruth that there was spectacular failure by intelligence. Intelligence has done the best that it could. We have supplied the information to law enforcement to do its work. We have, for that matter, even escalated in terms of greater deployment of our people to provinces to ensure that we are on the ground, we are in touch with the people that we work with who give us information. We were ensured that we brought people back into head office who would have to come in spite of the problems that are being experienced, both by the police and ourselves, in relation to COVID. We had to go back to offices to ensure that our work is properly analyzed so that the information that we give out is information that is credible. That information that we gather is based on foresight, it's based on credibility, and it is timeless. Like I said earlier on, a lot of things could have happened, But they were averted by the fact that we did supply this information and the police did act on this information. What we are seeing now is what we are seeing now. But what we did not see is because the work of State Security Agency and the police, the machinery was working on overdrive. So we did avert a lot of things. There was information that we missed here and there, but it is really not as if there was a spectacular failure from intelligence leading to the fact that the police could not effect arrests and stuff like that. We work around the clock with the police. We do monitor social media. We do monitor where we should monitor in terms of movements of those that are seen to be, that we know for a fact, as Mr. Bateman said, that we know for a fact also are inciting the violence through other mediums. So we are following up on that, and that information is fed into a system that will ensure that people are put behind bars. Thank you very much.
Ifundo ezingafundwa kulokhu, lessons to be learned, yes. Ngifuna ukwaphinda amazwi kaMinister uDlodlo. Ngebhadi elikhulu lokhu okuvinjwayo nokulungayo akuvamisile ukuthola indawo ukuthi kubikwe. Umbuzo uthi amaphoyisa akwazile yini? Ningi izinto ezwrong ezenzekile. But iziningi kakhulu eziright ezenzekile. Ngebhadi asixoxeke. Mhlawumbe asithathe indaba yase Moy River eyama-truck. Ukuthi ashile la ma-truck ashe lapha. But emva kwalokho kube sekuba namandla ukuthi angabe sabakhona ama-truck ashaya. Hayi ukuthi abantu abasathanda ukwashisa ama-truck. Emva kosuku eshila ama-truck umphakathi walapha wadilika wonke umphakathi wadilika. Kwathi ngenxa yokuthi kodwa kwase kunolwazi sekulungiselekile kwangakwazi ukuthi kube nama-truck aqhubekayo ukusho. Nangelanga ama-truck ayeshe ngayo ngo-2 ekseni wadilika wonke umphakathi waya ey'tolo. Ngenhlanhla enkulu amaphoyisa aselitholile ulwazi bafika kanye namaphoyisa afika kanye exactly ngesikhathi esifanayo zakwazi ukuvikeleke izitolo engezoyibiza ngamagama ebabezoyibhubhisa. Ngebhadi ke akufiki ekutheni into enjalo zithola ukuthi ngabe kwenzeka ukuthi kwavinjwa, ngabe kwenzeka ukuthi kwavinjwa. Njengamanje njengoba sikhuluma kunendawo eziningi engabe sekonakele ukuba le information ayikho namaphoyisa awekho kulezo ndawo. Angizozibala ukuthi iziphi ikakhulu eThekwini nakhona eJohannesburg. But enye into esilandelayo mhlambe esingakwazi kakhulu Minister Dlodlo ukusebenza nemphakathi ukuthi information esuka ingeyona ikwazi umphakathi ukwazi ukuthi this is a fake information. Like last night there was a big halabaloo that the whole one hostel is out on the streets. The whole hostel. We went there, there was nobody there. So there would be fake news that maybe the communities will help them to understand that such things don't or didn't happen. Yesterday we woke up with information that 5 stations in KZN police have been taken over by the rioters. Not a single police station has been taken over by the rioters in the province. Not one police station. That can't be true. Maybe that also answers the question. Police stations are there to do the normal policing. And then there will be assistance for reinforcement if things becomes riots and all that kind of thing, which becomes an abnormal way of policing. So it's important to differentiate between those things. Normal policing, which police stations are made for that, but they will be assisted if it needs be with the extra capacity when it's needed. Lessons have been learned. Maybe it's not the time to share the lessons, because some of those lessons we are using them as we go forward, as we are standing here. There is a question of capacity and the question of lack of resources. The National Commissioner, through you, Chairperson, I'll ask that he speaks on that.
Thank you very much, Ministers, for the opportunity. And I want to equally express my appreciation to members of media for their constructive questions. Firstly, members of the police at all police stations in the country, they are given training on level 1 and 2 regarding the handling of public disorders. This particular training is also further extended to cover Metro Police members. These members, these police stations have the capacity with regard to these particular deployments. Over and above that, we also acquire resources and make sure that those particular resources are sufficient to respond to level 1 and 2 of handling that particular public disorder as it arises. Further to that, we also have regional deployments of the level 3 capacity, which is purely the public order police units. Whenever the situation escalates to level 3, the public order deployments are then called to come and support the police stations. Therefore, I would like to confirm that police stations do have the capacity to handle or to respond to the current situations. And from a community perspective, I think the President pronounced the community policing strategy in the SONA. And within the community policing strategy, we also have the community in blue, as mentioned by the Minister. And as we speak, we've also now issued an activation message for the community in blue to come out and work together with the police and under the guidance and direction of the police to complement the policing which is there to respond to this situation. With regard to resourcing, through the turnaround vision, we've formally established an integrated resource committee at national, which is led by the Deputy National Commissioner for Corporate Support Services. This particular committee has been activated. Yesterday, for instance, we managed to fly resources down to KZN using our air support. They are putting a bird's eye view on the resourcing and stock levels throughout the country. As soon as any police station runs out of resources for responding, they would then activate that particular process, and then we urgently work on getting the resources where they are needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll go to the third batch of questions. Or the fourth batch of questions. The first of those questions is from Tando Maeko of Business Day. Has the security cluster monitored any possible eruptions of xenophobic violence in hotspot areas? Second question. Last night, the president considered that the protests, which may have begun as political protests, have now turned into demonstrations against systematic issues such as unemployment and poverty. Does the cluster not think a police-led response to the riots may fuel the flames instead of solving the issues? Another question from Tando Maeko is to say, what are the different intelligence structures doing to identify and apprehend those instigating and condoning the violence via social media? Has anyone been arrested for this? And if not, why not? Related to that question is that, has ministry acted on former President Jacob Zuma's daughter Duduzile's tweets, which has shared images and videos of violence? From Juanita Hunter of News 24. And also the same question was asked by Babalon Ndenze from Eyewitness News. And I think this must be responded to by the general, the police commissioner. The premier in KZN said 26 people died in that province, but the police minister says 10 people died. Please, can government give us accurate detail related to the death toll? And to the defense, what was behind the deployment of only 2,500 soldiers, whereas over 70,000 soldiers were deployed to enforce lockdown, but only a mere number for the arrest that is decimating the economy? In that order, to maybe we can have the Minister of Defense dealing with the deployments of numbers, unless you want to defer to the Chief of Joint Ops. Minister of Defense.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you to the journalist who raised the matter. Well, I guess the general will come in if I've not responded to this adequately. Just to say that you are correct that the numbers which we have deployed right now are far less than what we had mobilized during the period of the pandemic. I do want to emphasize the point that everything and every decision you take when you utilize the Defense Force, irrespective of whether it is an operation or the actual deployment of numbers in decision making, you must be informed by the assessment of the situation on the ground. At the point when the deployment occurred, which was yesterday morning, the numbers which we thought we could deploy were the numbers which you have seen, which has been reported about. Right now, for instance, there is a process underway of developing documents, a letter which is going to be sent to Parliament, to both the Speaker of Parliament and the chairperson of the NCOP. One of the reasons why that has not been received as yet, it is because people are grappling with issues of numbers, because ongoing assessment of the situation is happening behind the scenes. To take a decision as to the exact numbers of people we are deploying, because that also has financial implications. So when you talk numbers, you also have to talk possible expenditure which you are likely to incur for the deployment of those people. So I'm just saying that, you don't just wake up and thumbsuck the numbers. You wake up, you are informed by intelligence gathered, and then you decide what kind of strength you need for deployment, and then you can make an announcement about it afterwards. But there is the general sitting with the ministers, and maybe the generals can further elaborate on the issue. But I think that it's like people saying now, we don't see the defense force at the malls, we don't see them there, we don't see them there. The point is, the initial focus for us when this thing happened was that let's guard strategic installations, key installations, key national points of government. If you were to go, for instance, of the country, if you were to go to the airports, you will find the defense force. If you go to other installations which are key, you will also find them there. But at that point, I don't think we anticipated that there would be this scale of looting of the malls. But right now, obviously, people now are planning around deployment of some of your people to guard the malls. Throughout, our understanding has been that you have the private security industry, companies at the malls. And in fact, those people right now, those companies are collaborating with the South African Police Service. So it never occurred to us that you actually need to have the defense force in malls. But our focus was on deployment to the key national points of the country. Thank you very much, Minister.
Minister, the Chief of Joint Ops is not going to add because the Minister has sufficiently covered the issues. Then I'll hand over to the rest of the ministers.
Thank you very much. I must say that at this point, State Security Agency is already looking into the possibilities of eruption of attacks on foreign nationals that I would never want to call xenophobia. We are also looking at possible eruption of right-wing extremism, as you would have seen also in what was happening in KZN, which could lead to racial tensions in that area. So we are on top of issues. I just received a report yesterday, which is going to be properly packaged around the two issues that I'm talking to, the extremism and also possible attacks on foreign nationals. But I'm not saying that foreign nationals are going to be attacked. I'm just saying that it's something that we have been looking at. I think just to further elaborate on a question, Minister, if you don't mind, that was asked earlier on, and Minister Cele tried to respond to it without giving information. I think at this point I need to give information so that South Africans are a little comforted, but it is only a few that I will give to you so that you understand what it is that we've been able to quell. We were just talking with the Minister because information came to our attention about a possible attack in a particular area of Sandton. We dealt with that, it was quelled. There's quite a few examples that we could give about Gauteng, but I'm not going to elaborate on that. This electricity substation in New Homes in the Musunduzi local municipality was supposed to have been attacked on the 12th of July. That information was given to the police. The police were able to deal with it. In the eThekwini Metro, Westfield Prison, information was given to the police. They were able to quell the issues that would have arisen there to a large scale, on a large scale. Still on the eThekwini Metro, forewarning provided on plans to attack the ANC provincial office. That was averted. So the list really is endless on what information, what it is that we have averted between State Security Agency and the police. And I just want South Africans to be comforted that as they sleep at night, we are hard at work. It is not as though it's business as usual for us. It is never business as usual. Some of the issues that we're coming up with today, that we're experiencing today, as was raised about whether or not this is the correct approach when the protest has taken a different turn. It is no longer now about free Jacob Zuma, it's about socio-economic issues. It is a fact that the socio-economic issues would impact on what is going on in South Africa. But that doesn't mean, as I read out to you, Section 16.2 of the Constitution, people can protest. There is the right enshrined in Section 16.1. But Section 16.2 is very clear on when that limitation actually does kick in. Thank you.
Angikhumula njengoba echazile uNgqongqoshe ukuthi ngaphandle kwezinto ezibalwa umongameli njengomsebenzi nokunye ngaba indlala, lokho akubizeli ekutheni abantu baphule lokho khona, bamoshe lokho okukhona esikhundleni sokuthi kwakhelwe phezu kwakho. The job of the police cannot be to replace those conditions the president replaced, but is to quell the situation and to create the space for those corrections or whatever that is supposed to be done beyond policing. I want to emphasize the point, is to do that with a great care. Police must still maintain and sustain that integrity with a great care, with a less loss of life or zero loss of life. Yes, protect as much as you can, maximally so, the property, and balance that with saving the life. People should not lose lives going through that. So it's important that that is looked as if, or is looked as a space created by policing, creating peace so that other things are done. It can't be, we agree, a permanent solution that police must be there and do every other thing. We do that so that we give the space so that other things happen, social things happen. People go to school, go to work, go to hospital, go to buy food and all that. So we are doing that as a South African police, besides normal policing, arresting criminals and all that. The investigation, well, people are mentioning names of the people that are running amok on this so-called social media war. They mention one or two names. There are almost 12 names, between 10 and 12 names that the security cluster is looking at them. Not that they are not pursued; they are pursued as the statement did say, but the minister did say that that information is called, including the people that you have mentioned by names, are not spared when they break the law. When you break the law, it doesn't matter who you are. But police are dealing between 10 and 12 of those people that are running the thing. So some of them names are in the hands of the police. Police will act. The figure in KZN, we will not. We dealt with the number confirmed to us, but we will not deny that was said by the Premier. Ours is just to make sure that those numbers are aligned, and we find they died out of these activities. How did they die, and all that kind of stuff. But that Premier has given that number, and we have given the other number. It doesn't mean that the situation cannot be aligned and the number is one. We will live with that number, but the number we gave is a number that has been confirmed by the police in the KZN situation. We are receiving another number of the people that have died in Stampede somewhere in Soweto, whether Phosphorus or Katlehong, I'm not sure, but there are people that have been killed in Stampede. So we'll be confirming those numbers going forward. Thanks.
We are going to do 2 more batches, and then there are questions that have been repeat questions. We're not doing the repeat questions, and there are journalists who have asked follow-up questions which have already been covered. We are not going to deal with those questions. We are going to deal with questions that have not been that has not been raised before, because the ministers must go back and the generals must go back to do the real work on the ground. The first question on this batch is the scale from Jan Dilange Rapo. The scale of the unrest will need the arrest of hundreds, if not thousands, of people. The Criminal Procedure Act demands that suspects under arrest be charged within 48 hours after arrest and be released immediately. The legal system doesn't have the capacity to do this. How will you deal with this? Don't you need powers for longer detention to have a realistic chance of processing prosecutions? I think this will be handled by the commissioner. Nazir Noam Mohammed of Glow TV, how do you decide where to deploy the army? Is it proactive or reactive deployment? Does there first have to be looting before the army goes in? And by when can the communities that are under siege expect the army to be present? Greg Nicholson of the Daily Maverick, I think is to the police commissioner. How will you ensure SADF members to Chief of Joint Ops, how will you ensure SADF members don't commit similar abuses reported during their deployment during last year's lockdown? I think this should be dealt with by the police commissioner. Has the SNDF and SAPS issued members with a joint code of conduct and guidelines on using minimum force during the deployment? And the question that is being asked, the last one on this batch, is by Hwapelwa Palazzi at Jacaranda News. Minister Cele talked of arrests of people who caused conflict in Nkandla on the weekend of 3rd July. Have those arrests been made? There are questions by Lizeka Tando of Mail and Guardian. They've been responded to. Khaukhelo Mahuleho of UFM has been responded to. Because they are a repeat of the other questions, will indicate the other questions that have already been responded to. Over to you. You want to start with ministers or we start with the generals?
Well, the question of the capacity of the judiciary and prosecution really could be answered by the prosecution and judiciary. Even the commissioner of the police cannot answer that. The number somebody is asking could be hundreds or thousands. The number we gave this morning, we have gone past 700. We're close to 800. And we'll continue to arrest when it needs to be. That's the job of the police, and hand over to the next segment, which is prosecution. I'm sure the cluster together, led by the justice, will answer on that when the time comes. The deployment will be answered by generals. The people that they broke the law at Nkandla, yes. Some of them, they've been picked up. I've got a beautiful of one person who's having an R5 at Nkandla, and is a councillor of a certain ward in Guatuguza. So we have managed to, as we did say, that we have we have photos, we have footage and all that. We're just starting that. It's beautiful. He's in his beautiful black T-shirt and the R5 in his hand, and the police are dealing with that. It will be also remembered that the police must spend time quelling the situation. Part of quelling the situation is to deal with those that have committed crime. So we're not going to leave them alone, not at all. 4 cases now at Nkandla, Sunday issue, have been open. People identified. Some have been picked up already. There will be inquiry on those matters going forward. So generals can answer in terms of deployment, when do you deploy, and then the abuse of power by the ground forces on the ground. They can respond to that. Maybe let me take this opportunity of the question, where has been Cele? Cele has been on the ground all the time. That you don't see us on TV doesn't mean we don't work. there is that thing that if you don't see us, we're not there. We have been really working on the ground on the matters of special, both Gauteng and KZN. Maybe that you sleep at 3 and you wake up at 6 or wake up at 4. It's work that, unfortunately, there is a lot of work that cannot be brought on TV, that could not be brought on press briefing before it is done, before those things are happening. But also, there are still protocols. There are still protocols that you need to be more careful. On the day leading to the arrest of the former president, one of the very senior person was found to be positive, and then you have to take some protocols. It doesn't matter whether you're a minister or what. Protocols are for all of us. So you take those things, you walk slowly on other things, and until you check. And we did check the team that was there, and you were definitely the results that we received about 6 o'clock this morning were negative. So there are many other things that are there. Don't think that we are not working if you don't see us.
On the question, when do the military, if I can be specific, when do the military deploy? Do we deploy before or after the malls have been ransacked? The SANDF conduct deployments or operations inside the country in support of the SAPS and in cooperation with the SAPS, as well as to assist other state departments. Meaning that the SAPS and other law enforcement agencies will do and conduct their work. And when there is a situation or situations which then requires or warrants that the military can come in and assist and support as part of the security cluster, then the call will be made then. Assessments will be conducted and decisions will be taken. And we are all aware that that decision will have to be sanctioned by the president, because it is the president who will then authorize the deployment of the military in internal operations. yes, it might happen that that call is made after there has been uncalled for activities, but it will be not be correct that the military is seen to be in the forefront in terms of law enforcement and dealing with criminality in the country. The South Africa, this is not how it is set up. On the question of how we are going to ensure that the conduct of our soldiers, as referred to during the lockdown or misconduct. In the National Defence Force, there is continuous training as well as empowerment in respect of conduct at work or in operations. Not only in operations, it's also our daily work. We do continuous training and empower ourselves and our members in terms of conduct. Well, there will be situations like in any other environment that there will be members or a member who will do misconduct, and the necessary disciplinary actions get taken. And as well, during the lockdown, that's how we handled the situation. And currently, as we are deployed, the members have been trained, have been empowered in terms of conducting themselves accordingly. We also have a code of conduct that governs us and that drives us on how we must conduct ourselves. I cannot stand here and say there will not be any misconduct, but there are measures to deal with misconduct in the military and in any environment, even at home. There will be misconduct amongst members of the family or a kid, and then the necessary disciplinary actions or corrective measures get taken.
Thank you very much, Ministers, for the opportunity, and thanks to the media for the constructive questions again. Firstly, let me just start by adding to what General Sangweni has spoken about the defense. I just want to start by saying the one incident by members of the defense did not erase the high level of discipline displayed by members of the defense force. And secondly, the prompt response by the authorities has shown that we do not tolerate any conduct that will tarnish the operational processes that we're dealing with. The same applies to the South African Police Service. We collectively working together on that. Secondly, I also want to indicate that as and when we deploy together, there's SOPs that directs how we should work together. And of course, there is an alignment of or a link of the two codes of conduct, conducts to support or complement each other. Then the minister has already responded to the arrests, but what I would like to add is the fact that as and when we have an operation like this, which we refer to as a stabilization operation, there's always an integrated investigation task team that tackles the investigations and also process the arrests. This investigation task team is prosecutorial guided, So, which then means we are working together with prosecution. And there's also an additional integrated plan between SAPS, the prosecution, as well as correctional services, where we are also controlling the number of detentions. I then want to indicate that the law does provide for detention beyond the 48 hours if there's substantiating factors that the investigation still has to continue. And we then revert to that if a need arises. Lastly, one of the pillars of this stabilization operation is prevention. Apart from the fact that we stabilize the environment, but there's also prevention. We then deploy enough modus operandi analysts to pick up the modus operandi so that we counter the modus operandi and prevent any further incidents from happening. Therefore, the prevention pillar is meant to make sure that both the police detention facilities as well as correctional detention facilities do not become overwhelmed as we're handling this particular operation. So that's what it's gonna be the supplement to this. And we will be strengthening more and more the prevention part. That's why we're also now bringing in community policing. Thank you.
The last batch of questions, and these are operational. And I'm asking a question from Tando Maseko, whose many questions have been responded because it's important to clarify the question that he's asking. He's asking, can we please confirm the veracity of this message to members of SAPS by direction of the Provincial Commissioner, Lieutenant General N.S. Mukwanazi? All PSA officials within support services environment are instructed to stay home safely until such time they are informed when to come to office. And I'm not going to read the whole message, but the police commissioner has a sense of that. He will respond. The second question is from Karen Duplessis, a freelance journalist. Government also has a constitutional duty to protect the lives of the looters. Has the police anticipated how to get past the legal conundrum? Should a member of the community helping the police stave off the looters kill one of these looters while this is witnessed by police officers? Would such a community member be arrested too? The last question by Jason Felix of News 24. It has been clear that the police have been outnumbered in several areas in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. What is the plan of the police to prevent the violent demonstrations from spreading out to other provinces? Also, is there any sufficient intelligence reports that suggest the demonstrations could spread to other parts of the province? I think Ambassador Msimang will also have to support the generals in responding. The generals will sequence themselves in responding, and Ambassador Msimang.
Thank you very much again once more for the platform, ministers, and thanks to the media for the questions. I would like to start by clarifying the first question. Firstly, the PSA members referred to in Lieutenant General Mukwanazi's instructions are members who serve in the administration. They are not trained members of the South African Police Service. And these members, they've already been working in shift forms for the purposes of COVID-19. But what I would like to confirm as a national instruction that has already been issued is that all trained members of the South African Police Service who are in uniform but working in offices, they would be going out to the streets to join this particular response operation. So that's the difference between the two, and is also for the safety of the PSA members. There's also a question with regard to the community member committing a crime during the process of this particular operation. I just want to explain it that in the same way as members of the South African Police Service, whenever they interact with communities in trying to suppress violence, if they act outside the scope of the law, they also then become subject of the investigation. The same would apply to a member of the community because no one is exempted from the law. That is why when we train members of the community in blue, that also include legal orientation, but also during the community education processes, we also then educate them. But we are obviously expected to act. With regard to the spreading, I'm sure Ambassador Msimango is going to add, but what I can say for now is that the operational instruction regarding the stabilization of this public disorder has been extended to all 9 provinces already from NATJOINS. The provinces that are not yet adversely affected, they have been instructed to design prevention plans and execute those particular prevention plans so that we counter the spreading. And further to that, the intelligence part of it has also been deployed across the provinces or activated in order to start gathering proactive information so that we can know to which province is the spread going. Finally, the modus operandi analysts, they also then do an analysis of the modus operandi and begin to indicate at the early stage what is the target of the type of a province for testing that particular modus operandi, because the provinces are not the same. And all of that become part and parcel of the prevention plan. Thank you.
Minister, I have been covered by General Secretary. I don't think there's anything I need to say.
Yes, I don't think it's safe for you to speak.
The ambassador is indicating that he has been covered. The other questions we have received are repeat questions in different variations, so we are not going to ask the questions. The substantive issues that are in those questions have been covered. I need to clarify the following as we conclude this media briefing. On malls, last night the economic cluster of ministers supported by NetJoints met with businesses who are in the retail sector to coordinate the security response to safeguard livelihoods, food security, and economic stability. And that work is done with the full support of NetJoints, and the coordination is kicking in today. And of course, there has to be prioritization as the police improve their deployment supported by the army. The second issue I need to clarify is this issue of saying community involvement will result in vigilantism. It's not correct. We are meeting with traditional leaders and community structures who are to ensure there is coordination and support the coordination with the police. And those structures have always been coordinating with us as government through the Presidential Coordinating Council. So it's nothing new. We are meeting with them to make sure that we loop that coordination and a community's response is guided. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time and allow the ministers and the generals to go back to their work. We'll take it on the ear. As the situation unfolds, there will be continuous briefing to the nation. Thank you. Have a lovely day further. Mask up, stay safe, and wash up. Thank you.
Minister Pegikele, we missed you. We really did. I mean, your silence was deafening, so much so that President Ramaphosa beat you to it last night in condemning the violence. Well, Minister Pegikele, they just came out of hibernation to assure South Africans that his men and women in blue, with heightened visibility, and to offer protection, and assured everyone that they are working on the firearm licensing issues. And on the other hand, Police Commissioner Kehlas Tole's assertion that police are capacitated to deal with the impasse is a total contrast to what's happening on the ground right now. And we also seen State Security Minister Ayanda Dlodlo in defense mode, saying that her department actually averted what could have been worse, and that they are pretty much on the pulse of the situation. And the Defense Minister, in another development, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, says that there is no indication that there could be a state of emergency declared. Interestingly, just a couple of days ago, she said that there was no need for the army to quell the ongoing tension because there was no war. Now, following President Cyril Ramaphosa's address to the nation last night, the Justice, Crime, Prevention and Security Cluster was briefing the media on the containment of violent protests currently taking place in some parts of the country. And the cluster did thank the citizens who stand against looting, and they outlined the measures underway to deal with the situation and restore law and order in all the affected areas. This is the agenda on SABC News. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment.
Music game is like a challenge.
If you love nice things, you love the Quarter Pounder with Cheese Meal, now at $49.90.
Maybe to paralyze kusho ukuthi impilo yakho isizoshintsha. Emveni kokuba sengilimele ngichitha isikhathi esikhulu ngisekhaya ngilalela ukhozi ngilalela abantu bafana no Black Coffee bakwazile ukuqhubeka nempilo ngibese ngibona ukuthi nginezathu eziningi zokuphila. Igama lami nguDumsani, ngalimala engozini yemonto, ngalimala eSpinal Cord. Kulonyaka ngenza i-work readiness program exhaswe uQuadPara Association. Ngiyabonga kakhulu ngoba ukhozi kube bebengekho bona mhlawumbe ngabe ngisahleli ekhaya kodwa manje sengikulindele ukuthi ngiye emsebenzini.
If you love nice things, you love the new Grand Chicken Classic Meal at $49.90.